So I often go back to the idea of measuring people by numbers. That's an important thing that happens. It's not important. I don't like it, but it's an important thing that happens in my career, and I think it happens to a lot of people's career, where we measure people, and we measure their significance in numbers, whether it's you know um, baseball players, whether it is financiers, the number of deals that they get, um, marketers, the number of sales that they make, um, any number of different sort of numbers, right, that people are measuring and measured in. In my career, it's usually number of publications, number of citations, and number of grants. It's not so big in the business arena, but that is something that people look at. So those things and people to really are good at doing the numbers game and thinking about how that they can get measured as successful and not successful. And then we determine these measurements in terms of how people actually are and in terms of what they what who they are, right? Like we say that, hey, this person is amazing based on this number. And when you're part of it and you sort of think about that, you realize that that number does not mean a heck of a lot. And that number is hiding a lot of different stuff. And lots of people are um, excluded by that number. Um, I'm very much well aware of the sort of exclusionary stuff that we do in this sort of the idealistic individual that complies with these numbers as sort of successful. The idealistic individual usually follows very strong social stereotypes that we all have of what that particular individual looks like, right? So it would be, who's the best leader, and the best leaders some stereotypical looking, you know, male, for example, right? And I'm very well aware of those things, the sort of idealistic representation of what that means and how these numbers get boiled down to that, and they become sort of prototypical of how things actually are. And what I have come to realize, like everything else, right? That whether you are training to be a swimmer or whatever, is that you have a certain amount of capability, and you don't change those things. You can't sort of improve these things very rapidly. When you look at swimming, for example, improvement of a half a second off your time is actually quite spectacular and take months and months and months of work. Um, and we forget about that, like a really hard work of people really dedicating their time. And so I'm reminded of all of these sort of numbers and how we measure things and how we look at things. And I'm reminded that we can't change those things. It's very hard to do, right? There's a lot of Olympic hopefuls that are out there that all have basically the same number, and we can't change those things. There's such a challenging thing that happens. We can sort of add more to them and sort of speed them up very slowly, but that takes a tremendous amount of work and dedication, and you can't and you can't ultimately change them that much. You're changing them such a hair that it really doesn't matter that much. So I'm reminded that the only way that we could sort of change these things, and those numbers really don't mean that much. So I'm reminded of just keeping busy. That's ultimately that I sort of think about is all of these things, they don't mean that much. There's not like a qualitative feeling to them often. But what you can do is just keep busy. Just keep doing things, keep moving, really, really taking steps forward, just keeping busy and keeping just doing stuff. I think when you sort of stop doing stuff and you no longer, and it's not about numbers, right? Like none of this is about numbers. It's just keeping busy, puttering around, figuring out how you can do this and do that, do all sorts of different things, regardless of those numbers. You can't sort of change those numbers. I'm very well aware that they are what they are. And they don't really change that much in terms of who you are. And so you have to live within those constraints of, hey, this is your number, this is what you're given. Um, so what can you do about it? Well, what you can do, and you know, is just keep busy. Just do your thing. Find out how you are best able to keep going. And sometimes keeping busy means not, like not being busy and sort of strategically planning to not be busy. But you know what I've come to determine is that these numbers are almost highly inaccurate in terms of what they actually do. Right? You ask a baseball player and ask them if like RBIs actually matter to them. And it does, but it doesn't change how they play and their skill set. Um, like the only thing that you can do is just keep moving. You just have to, show up to practice, do the sort of basic things that we all know, but none of that stuff is like rocket science in any sort of way. Like there's no sort of lever that has a direct correlation with the number itself, right? Of RBI, for example. Other than the only thing that we know that actually exists that is quite predictive, it's just showing up and keeping busy and doing the things that you just need to do, right? Like just repeat many different things, and that's it. Like ultimately, there's no like change that you're gonna expect. There's no sort of magic potion unless you take magic potions like steroids and sort of things like that are maybe not the best thing. Um, but ultimately, there's no way to sort of change these things. So the only thing that you can focus on is just keeping busy and doing your thing and having fun while you're doing it. Like knowing that this is the life. This is having a good time and enjoy it. Right? I think keeping busy, enjoying things, waking up, knowing that you're gonna have a good time. I think those things are really valuable. But there's no quantitative aspect of these things. They're so detached from reality. And we just have to sort of recognize those things. Just show up, keep busy, and have fun. All of that is really qualitative. Um, but that's it. Ultimately, that's what it means. That's the only thing that you can change. It's not the numbers. You're never going to change those numbers because they are what they are. But you can certainly change just showing up, having fun, doing your thing. Um, that's it. Like this sort of qualitative stuff really matters. All right. Take care and have a wonderful day.